All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Town Hall. We are here for our second public hearing regarding the town's fiscal year 25-26 town budget. First order of business, as always, pledge of allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land in which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Councilmember Alley.
Here.
Councilmember Wedgemont.
Here.
It is noted that Council Vice President Marin is absent today, and Councilmember Bergner is on her way. She'll be here in a few minutes.
She'll be here in a couple of minutes.
Thank you. I just do want to note, Mike Merritt is absent tonight because today is the Thursday prior to Easter, Holy Thursday. I just want to make that on the record, but
Okay.
go ahead.
School Committee Chair Vetter.
Here.
School Committee Member Brusso.
Here.
School Committee Member Massinanti.
Here.
School Committee Member Lander.
Here.
It is noted that School Committee Member Restivo, Shear, and Whitford are absent today.
Miss Whitford is sick.
Thank you. All right, as I mentioned from the beginning, the purpose of this meeting is to have a public hearing regarding the town's fiscal year 25-26 budget. And I'm going to hand it right over to Town Manager Jim Maney for a presentation. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. This presentation. So this presentation we will give tonight is the same as it was Tuesday night, and it is about 41 pages in length. We'll go through as quickly and efficiently as we can. So my roles, I'll be going for 7.5 pages, just some of the highlights. I'll turn it over to our Finance Director, Brian Sylvia, who's to my left, and then we'll move on from there. So what is the purpose of tonight's meeting? It's a public hearing, second public hearing. If you look on page 3, there are 2 public hearings are required to be conducted on the preliminary budget prior to April 18th. The final action on the budget by the Town Council shall occur on or before May 1st of each year, upon which time the Town Council considers any petitions received and gives final approval to the final budget by a majority vote of all members of the Town Council. Page 4. This is the schedule April, May, and June of this year, 2025, related to the 25-26 budget. It's the budget calendar. So Tuesday night, April 15th, was the first public hearing. Thursday night, the 17th, April 17th, is the second public hearing, which we're at. April 21st, which is a Monday, there's a 4 p.m. deadline to submit petitions for revisions to the preliminary budget, which would require 25 signatures. On Monday, April 28th, consideration of the petitions, if any, and the adoption of the final operations budget would be during the regular Town Council session, which is on Monday, the 28th. May of 2025. On Monday, May 12th, there's a 4 p.m. deadline for submissions of final petitions for a referendum that would require 200 signatures. On Friday, May 16th, the deadline for petition signatures would have to be verified by the Board of Canvassers. In June, Tuesday the 10th, a possible budget referendum would be on the Tuesday following the first Saturday in June. So, possible budget referendum would be on the Tuesday following the first Saturday in June. Friday the 13th, the town tax assessor sets the tax rate for the 25-26 budget. And also, just for a point of note, Wendy, tax assessor, is here tonight and to answer any questions the council might have related to that commercial rate that we talked about last night. Let's go to page 5. Personnel costs and summary of changes. The town has 4 unions, and we will go over the year and what the rate was that it went up for this year. So and this is year 2 of their budget. So the IBPO is the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, which is still in negotiations and just started. That contract ends July 1st, June 30th, and so we just budgeted 2% on the first year just on that. The IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, which is the South Kingston EMS personnel, they're in year 2, and they got a 2% for that year. Council 94, which is our largest union that is represented, is, it's correct, right, Brian? So it is larger than MEA. That was 2% in year 2. The South Kingston MEA, Municipal Employees Association personnel, 3%. And the non-union, which accounts for about 40 people in this town, is 3%. Question came up during budget, why is the non-union at 3% and the other unions at 2%? Some of them. And the reason for that is the other unions also got skill-based incentives, which the non-union do get, which means it's like wellness. If you sign up for wellness, you would get a stipend and so forth and so on. But there was retention pay built in to the IAFF, Council 94, and MEA, which was not available for the non-union. So to retain good workforce that we have, we had to build in some type of incentive for retention pay. So it balanced out. Just that 2% is lower than what it really balanced out to because of the retention pay that was agreed to. Let's go over the bottom of page 5, which is the proposed position changes. Full-time employees that change. Anytime you hire a full-time employee in this town or any place, the salary is just one piece of it. You can increase by approximately 50% what the salary is, which the true cost is for any full-time employee when you're hiring someone. For example, you look at the the net would be 2 full-time employees for the town in this budget cycle. One would be the parks maintenance technician, Council 94, wages was 62, benefits 34, total was $96,000. That would be the impact. The second one was the paramedics, hiring 2. Wages $134,000, benefits $49,000, total be $183,000. We're hiring 2 this year because we're opening a new EMS station next year at this time. We need 8 personnel to fully staff that 24/7 position, building. So we hired 2 last year, hired 2 this year, and we would need to hire 4 next year to staff that Perryville station. The good thing with the paramedic positions by hiring 2, even though the impact is what you see there also is a major savings in overtime because we are short-staffed. So even though that number is there, we're reducing our overtime with the existing people that are either on military leave, sick leave, vacation, or that we still have positions to fill. Those positions are fully funded by the EMS building as well. So that's all good news. We always do more with less. We're trying to do more with less all the time. Police chief consolidated 2 positions into 1 on the police department to make it more efficient. The 2 positions that were eliminated were the records clerk and the office clerk 2. And the new position is a public safety data technology technician. And so that position is a subtraction of the 2 positions. So really there's only a net of 2 new FTEs for this coming year. Let's go to page 6. I would also just like to add on page 5 as well, we had 6 other positions budgeted, a grant manager, communications manager, there were several others, one was in IT and so forth and so on. To be fiscally prudent, we eliminated all of them, and which saved hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. It's not that we didn't need them, but there's priorities, and cost went up, and you'll see in the presentation Brian will give where they are. Page 6 again. So let's look at the proposed budget highlights. The school fund is $63,262,000. The increase is $803,000 over last year, which comes out to 1.29%. But that number is also a little misleading. $608,000 was allocated from the Health Care Management Fund that was due for the school department, so that money was taken out. So really, it's the difference between the 608, the 803 minus the 608 is what the real number was that it went up, and that was from other revenue that was coming in. The town general fund is $33,900,000. The economic driver why it went up by 1.2 million or 3.68% was because the debt service went up substantially, almost doubled. And also because of contractual obligations that are on a normal cost of business every year. And Brian, if I'm correct, that number without the debt service increase would have been about 1.6%, something like that?
Yes.
Yes. The debt service fund, it's going up to $3,500,000, which was an increase of 1.7 million, or 97%. That is a direct result of the additional school debt that we have for building the new high school. The proposed tax transfer to the schools, $55,994,000, which is a $0 increase from 24-25 fiscal year to 25-26. The proposed tax levy is $78,987,000, which is an increase of 2.3 million, or 3.03% change from last year. The proposed tax rate is $9 per thousand of valuation versus what it was up to this point. It was $11.05, it was decreased from $11.05 to $9. Now that right there, Councilperson Bergner brings up that we have to compare an apple to an apple with this. So it would have gone up to $11. If we kept that same rate with the $11, it would have gone up to $11.36, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
1132.
$11.32. The estimated net assessed value in this town is $8,754,000,000, which went up from which went up by $1.8 billion, which was an average of 26.04%. We have a very stable, healthy tax base in this town. If you look at page 7, that number is broken down even a little more. This is the summary of the estimated net assessed values less exemptions. So the taxable land and buildings in this town were valued in fiscal year 24-25 at $6.854 billion. The proposed on the tax roll this year, 25-26, in this budget, will be $8,656,000,000. Once again, it's a net change of $1,801,000,000, 26.28% increase. The tangible property went from $90,517,000 in 24-25 to $97,753,000, which is a net change of $7,235,000, which is a net increase of 7.99%. So once again, total taxable property in 24-25 was $6.9 billion. In 25-26 will be $8.7 billion. Net change is $1.8 billion, or 26.04% on average. Let's go to page 8. I'll go over the first couple of few lines. So let's go. This is the fiscal year 25-26 proposed tax levy. The total property taxes required for the town would be $21 million, this is the first line, $647,000. And for the schools, $57,481,000, which the total is $79,129,000. We look at the allocation of the tax levy. For the town, every tax dollar that we bring in, approximately 27.36% goes for town operations, and for the school, 72.64% for school operations. So I will turn this over to Brian Sylvia now, and he can finish the presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Just to go over again that number, because again, on the prior slide, you saw the town allocation to the school at 55.9 million. Just to go over that top number, the 57.4 million, that is the 57.4 million allocation to the school department net the debt, the tax revenue needed to fund the debt. So that is the debt obligations of the school department minus what the town will be taking in for state aid and minus what the town will be using for debt service fund balance, which comes out to $1,486,000. That coupled with the local appropriation to the school department is how you arrive at the $57.4 million number. And that is how you would then arrive at the allocation, as Jim alluded to, the 27.36% to the town and 72.64 to the school. I'm going down to the bottom on page 8, the summary. This is what makes up the total property. So you have the top line is the current year taxes. That's the $77,950,000. You see the breakdown between the town and the school. And the other revenue line, the 1.1 in the total, that is made up of prior year taxes of $400,000, interest on taxes of $348,000, and payment eluded taxes or pilots for $430,000. That makes up the 1.1, and that is the total property tax revenue of the town, those two combined.
Can I jump in real quick?
Go
I just wanted to clarify for folks, just so that there isn't a misunderstanding, that total for the school, 57,481,486, in theory it is for the schools, yes, but it doesn't go to the school department. The 1.7 is for the debt service, right? I just want to clarify that, right? So
Yep.
what I don't want people to think, because it's a 0% increase, that implies that we have an increase. And so I just want to kind of clarify that our school budget is not going to be 57.
Yep.
That is just, it's under the school heading because it includes the buildings.
Correct.
Thank you.
On page 9.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Brian, before you go on, can you please repeat that? Because I don't find that 1 million. Thank you.
Okay. Moving to page 9.
Brian, 1 second there.
Yes.
Do you think it would be possible, as we go through this second night of meetings, we have good points that maybe we could do like a highlight sheet for the April 28th meeting? Like, for example, like the property, in simple sentences, the property transfers to the school remains the same, X. Additional money was found with the healthcare fund, Y. It doesn't, like a one paragraph, like we're identifying some of these things right now so that people then, maybe that would be like an additional slide on the 28th, but just like some common facts that people like would not understand, but we say all the time, like the tax rate last year was 11.05. If we were to roll it over, it would be 11.32, but with the new assessments, it's now $9. You know, and some of the high-level things that Jim said, the town side, the municipal side didn't identify a need for 5 positions, but we didn't fund those 5 positions because of fiscal responsibility. Because I think that people, it's hard to pull that out of Excel spreadsheets on PowerPoint slides. How does everyone feel about some of those points?
I think an FAQ like that would be very helpful, just very succinct, maybe 1 page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, something like top lines of what this budget does, what it doesn't do, et cetera. I'm okay with that.
I mean,
And Brian, if you're going to include that $11.32 assuming no increase in net assessed value of property in the town, I think you should also include a breakdown of, what it looks like without the debt service. Just
Yeah.
a 1.5% increase in the tax levy without the debt service. And then
Yeah.
showing what inclusive of that additional 1.5% increase in tax levy due to the debt service.
Okay.
So we can sort of see it all.
Okay.
I think that's good, because it's really a very, last year, we didn't have an increase at all. We did have an increase in spending, but the tax rate stayed the same, but this is only 1.59, you said,
About that.
right? So that's really, and many of the staff got a 2% increase across the board. We did some restructuring of the contract, so I think people need to know that. I think it's a fair point, but I'd like to have that so that if you walked away, instead of having this, you maybe just walk away with a high-level summary.
And then the budget drivers, which you've already identified, I think on slide 5 or 6.
Yep.
Great idea.
Sort of
Great
like the
idea.
budget, but with words mainly, for people that like words better than numbers.
Okay. Not my strong suit, but I'll work it out.
Well,
You're really good at numbers.
I do training in that area, so give me a call.
I'm happy to send an email, and you can then make sure they all think it's fine, too.
Very good.
You're very good at succinctly, summarizing those things, so.
It's very good at sending emails.
Succinct? That is not.
Well, in
that's not
writing,
my
you're
ontological
succinct
sign.
in writing. Yeah, but in writing, you're very succinct, or can be. You have the potential.
Jim.
All right.
I was called succinct.
I think you got a sense of what we're looking for there. So we can continue on here.
Just to confirm, we're good on page 8. Going to move on to 9.
Yes.
Okay. So on page 9, this is a continuation of where you just see a breakdown between the town and school using that percentage. So you see the breakdown of the net assessed value, and you see a breakdown of the tangible has been locked now, so the breakdown between the tangible, that filters down. I'm on the middle of the page where you see a breakdown on the tax rate. Again, it's proposed at $9, and that's proposed at $2.46 for the town and $6.54 for the school. The town is down 50 cents, whereas the school is down $1.55 as opposed to the current fiscal year. Overall, the levy change for the town is up $1,027,000, whereas the schools are up $1.2 million. Overall, the proposed levy increase is 3.03%. On this slide, you have a summary of the tax levy. So as Jim mentioned earlier on a previous slide, on the first column, the assessed value at $8.7 billion. You have, it would work out to a proposed levy of $78.9 million, which is an increase of $2.3 million, or 3.3%. We have an allowance for uncollectible and abatements of just over $1 million, which works out to then the budgeted revenue for current year taxes of $77.9 million. I wanted to pause there for a minute because we did have a question previously on commercial specifically. And again, as Jim mentioned, Wendy is here to answer questions on that as well, but specifically why you're seeing the reduction there. The assessed value for commercial properties went up 9.8%, whereas again, the rate going from 11.05 to $9 is a reduction of 18.55%. So the value is not going up as high as the rate is going down, and that's why you're seeing that reduction on the commercial side. Residential, conversely, is going up 28.7%, which is why you're seeing the then increase on the residential side. But that's causing the reduction as you're seeing it there on the commercial side. And to pause if you had any questions.
All right, Wendy, come on up. Let's ask you a few questions on this.
Good evening.
Good evening. Now, I guess it would appear obvious that there's different market for commercial and residential properties, so we'd see a different increase in assessments related to those because these assessments are based on sales activity.
Correct. And it is extremely difficult for me to basically know the winning Powerball numbers, if you will, before they pull them, but we get a pretty good gauge, which is why we run a preliminary analysis, which we did in February. I'll run another one in about 2 weeks. We just finished hearings. They went about 2 weeks over. So unfortunately, if that didn't happen, I would have had a little bit of a better gauge today. We identified some issues from the hearing, so we're handling that now. So there's money coming in and out, but I feel pretty confident that we're going to be pretty close to this. But just to back up to the question that was asked in regards to the net real property commercial, Brian's correct. There was a 9.8% growth, but it kind of got lost. If you think about it, it's a scale, right? Higher assessment, lower rate, higher rate, lower assessment. So it looks like there was a loss. It wasn't. It just kind of got transferred over to the real estate, and you know, other towns deal with that with doing a split rate, but that would be, you know, for the council to decide.
And the commercial property would consist of those real property that is zoned commercial, is that right?
Correct. So I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. So I believe what you're asking is what is commercial real estate?
Yes.
That's what we call like a state code. So you've got 3 state codes in particular that drive the commercial. You've got a state code 7, which is industrial. Right now, we still have to rerun the numbers, but that went up 4% for the reval. And then you've got state code 6, which is a commercial 2 classification. So that's $100,001 and up. So that's your bigger businesses, your CVS. And then you've got state code 5, which is commercial 1. So that's any commercial property valued at $100,000 and less. So your smaller businesses. And just to give you, you won't see it on the slide. Fun fact: behind the scenes, we have what's called a DOA report, Department of Administration, and for year end 12/31/2023, for state code 6, which is commercial 2, which is $100,001 and up, we had 241 accounts, and the total was 391 million and some change. For right now, for year end, we're still certifying. We're still in the middle of a reval. So right now, 12/31/2024, we have 240 accounts. So we did lose one large commercial 2 state code 6 account, which was the old Schneider Electric at 132 Fairgrounds. So we did lose $4 million due to a board appeal that was awarded an abatement. But we still had growth for that commercial 2 so far. We're still cakes in the oven. The growth was a difference of $41,962,000, give or take. So we still have growth. It's just with this slide, it's not really captured.
All right, I just want to clarify, it's interesting there. You had commercial 1 and commercial 2, and one of those captures commercial property that has a value of less than $100,000?
Correct. State code 5
and
is
what's
$100,000 and less.
And how much in assessed value makes up that?
I need to pull the report. Just give me 1 minute here. This is as of February, so these may change. Okay, state code. You asked for the larger accounts or the smaller accounts?
The smaller first.
Okay, so the smaller commercial 1, so 100,000 and less, we have not 990,700 as of now for real estate taxable.
All right, so that shows it's sort of rare to find real property valued at less than 100K. Okay.
9 accounts. We have 240 accounts, commercial 2, and right now taxable assessment is $433,834.
Okay.
Ish.
And within that is that $4 million that we lost due to the appeal there, Schneider Electric, but we've also, despite that, made up for it with growth in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it will change again. We're in the middle of a reval. I'm only got 2 hands, but right now we are dealing with Envine. Their golf club went from private to public, so I'll be working on that next week. That'll probably put, give or take, it's a real wild guess, about 800 to $1 million. We're still trying to do research for the assessment on that. And we also have a real estate, not commercial, so maybe I won't even go there actually, but there's a lot of changes going on.
And
we'll have more growth, I anticipate.
Generally, just by looking at this, there's, I guess, a lot less demand to acquire commercial property, which would equate to less of an appreciation in the assessment as compared to residential.
The reval commercial is up 12%. Now, you've got some accounts that might be on the higher range, 30, others, a couple percent, so we're going with a median. But again, that's as of February.
And that's typical that there's disparity there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The budget here is earlier than some other towns, so it's difficult to be able to manage certification and reval during this time, but we do the best that we can. We have multiple challenges.
Okay. I want to ask you about tangible property quick as well. If we go to slide 7, we can see that there was an increase in the assessed values of tangible property of about 7.99%. And if we go to slide 10, you can see that there's an increase in the levy related to tangible property of about 6.4%. I mean, I would expect those to be in line. They fairly are. The levy increase is slightly below the actual assessment increase. Why would that be here?
That's a good question.
And I know there's that 50,000 exemption. You get an exemption from tax on tangible property up to the first 50,000 of value. When did that law go into place?
12/31/23. So for our 2024 bill that we're still last quarter's due in May, we're locked in. So we're not going to capture that growth. We're going to get reimbursed from the state, and I can't remember the figure what it is now, and I apologize for that. So any other new small accounts, we have to absorb. The state won't reimburse us for those moving forward.
All right, so maybe that could be part of the difference here?
Tomato,
Could be.
tomato. Yeah,
All right.
this will be the first year. We have new billing software too. There's lots of surprise challenges this year for our department. We're doing the best we can. We're doing a great job, and I want to thank my staff too. We couldn't possibly work harder, but I'm confident that we're going to get to the finish line.
All right.
I do plan on coming back. The earliest would be May 12th, latest May 27th for a presentation on where we loved. I'll have numbers then, and they'll be more defined.
Sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you. Any questions for Wendy? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
While on this slide, I just wanted to cover, because we talked about it Tuesday night. Again, mentioned we got about where we landed on the rate at $9. If we went to $8.99, the budget wouldn't have been balanced. We would have been off about $30,000. As you see, the change in 1 cent is $78,000. That's why we have that $49,000 that we were talking about. That's really just sitting in the uncollectible right now. It's a little higher than we need to be, and that's where that will be used if the council agrees for funding the increases in the healthcare. But that's you're seeing that on this slide where we had to go to $9 to get the budget balanced, and it was about $30,000 difference, and that's where you're getting that $49,000 excess in the allowance for uncollectible right now. And I'll talk about that when we go over the potential amendments, but that's kind of illustrated there, where that's where you see it's on where 1 cent change is the $78,000.
I understand what you're saying about manipulating the collection to account for the 30,000, but where are you seeing the swing in the 49? I just can't find it in the cell.
So it's the we to balance the budget, we needed to hit the $77,950,000. So we needed to hit that.
Yep.
We would have, to get to $9, the actual revenue would have been $78 million. There's an extra $49,000 in there by going to $9, because the change is about $78,000, almost $79,000 on each cent. So we needed the 30 of it. So we have an extra 49, and that's just in that proposed allowance for abatements and overlay right now. That's inflated by $49,000 right now.
Okay. So I think I understand. If we were at $8.99, we would
We'd
be
be short.
short by,
30,000.
right. Okay.
Okay,
Brian, you increased the collection rate to 98.75%.
that's correct.
And what's the actual collection rate over the last 5 years? Can you tell us that?
Not off the top of my head, but I will have that
All
at the
right.
next meeting. For the 5 years.
What are you thinking?
Well, typically you use a collection rate that equals something equal to an actual historical collection rate. I just want to know if those are sort of in line, or ours is a little more conservative. And if ours is more conservative, then we could potentially increase a little bit to add, more revenue in our budget, which
Right.
would potentially allow us to reduce the tax rate another cent. I don't know if that's possible. I just want to get some more information.
We have been going up.
That's what I thought you were thinking, but I thought you were thinking like we could maybe come down a penny, but you were trying to see if that was there.
In the last couple of years, the collection rate has risen, and corresponding to that, prior year tax revenue has been going down because you collect more in the current year. It's not available to collect in the prior years. So the prior year revenue has been going down. So you have seen a shift in the town in the last few years where the collection rate has gone up, current year revenue has been increasing, prior year tax revenue has been going down. So, but I will have the specifics on that.
All right, thank you.
Again, this is, we went over this the other night, but this is just showing some trends on the levy allocation over the last 10 years. Within the current year, you're seeing, as mentioned previously, the town allocation of the levy is at 27.36%. The school allocation would be at 72.64%. The proposed rate at $9. Again, the assessed value would be at $8.7 billion. And the proposed levy at just under 79 million, 78.9 million, with the proposed levy of 3.03%. On the next slide, page 12, this is a summary of the enacted changes by the council through the preliminary budget adoption process. The town manager's budget was proposed for an amount of $34,086,713. And the following changes were enacted to get us where we are now. So property tax revenue, current year taxes, was reduced by just under $338,000. EMS billing was increased by $85,000. The interfund computer services revenue from the school department, transfer in, was reduced by $31,847. School field maintenance was reduced by $304. The healthcare management fund was increased by $76,500, and the use of designated fund balance was increased by $70,512 for an overall reduction in the budget of $138,077 to a new proposed amount of $33,948,636 on the revenue side. On the expense side, the top portion are all within the town manager's office. This is related to the removal of 2 positions, as Jim had noted earlier, within the town manager's office. And the last 2 slides, the last 2 items of note is implementing the town funding that interfund, the computer services that were previously funded by the school department. That is implementing the expense on the town side. Again, for a total on the town side, on the expense side of $33,948,636. And continuing on, this is a net zero impact, but the council also took action allocating the human services and outside agencies. There was a miscellaneous expense budgeted of $175,050. You see the actual contribution was $182.50. That difference of $7,000 was already budgeted for the celebrations, the parades. Yes. But here is noted is the allocation to the various HSOA programs that the council had enacted on pages 14 and 15. No change here. You're seeing a change. The previous allocation was $175,050, which is the new amount as well, just spreading the money out. Again, at now $175,050. Moving along to page 16. This is our year-end projection for the current fiscal year, FY25. As noted on Tuesday night, revenue is very close to our prior estimate at finishing ahead by $922,000. It's basically been a swing on the investment income and the operating transfer in. You'll see on the investment income, we're projecting another approximately $50,000 for the balance of the year. We're projecting that to level off, obviously. And the change in the operating transfer in is the transfer that we'll anticipate bringing before the council for a transfer from the employee settlement fund to the general fund to fund a settlement with the EMS union. So there was very little change between our prior estimate and now on the revenue side, finishing ahead at about 922,000. On the expense side, this has grown by about 300,000. Our prior estimate had a year-end projection of about 1.2 million. We're now showing 1.5. Most, again, as of that changes on the expense side. And that is related to, again, we're about 2 months further through the year. I think it's safe to say we're through the winter months. We have all contracts implemented at this point. We have all retro implemented at this point, and we have a clearer projection as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. Moving along on page 17. This is a summary of all funds budgeted for the town for fiscal year 26. Overall, the total is coming in at $111,582,399, or a proposed increase of 4.02%. Moving along to page 18. Very similar in nature, but this is a summary of just the subgroups of the general fund. So the general fund only, on the various subgroups, you're seeing an increase proposed of 3.68%. To, as noted previously, a total of $33,948,636. This is another way to look at the same. This is the general fund, just broken in a different manner, where you broke out by the different groups, be it wages, benefits, services, capital outlay, commodities, and contributions. Same general fund, just kind of the expenses broken out in a different manner, but just to present it in a different manner. But again, the number stays the same. The projected increase at 3.68% stays the same. Moving along to page 20. This is a revenue summary for the upcoming fiscal year for the general fund. You're seeing on the property taxes increasing by a proposed 2.78%. And you're seeing the operating transfer out sliding down. That increase there is associated with predominantly, there was a small increase to the recreation center, but the bulk of this increase, or all of this increase other than an increase to the small increase to the recreation center, is related to the debt service and the bond anticipation notes. Otherwise, the major changes in here is, again, as noted a few times previously, but the change requested by our town auditors, where we had department revenue coming into, we had transfers from other funds, be it the guild, the recreation center, the enterprise funds, for services from the facilities department into the department revenues. That is being moved to the operating transfers in now. So a shift in operations, but no real net effect. Also noted at the bottom, you'll see the use of fund balance, which is proposed at $1,620,512. Moving along to page 21, you see our current standings with our fund balance. Our current fund balance is noted in the fiscal year 24 audited financials at $16.7 million, which represents 18.46% of our operating budget or operating revenues for fiscal year 24-25. Peacedale Office Building, the next two slides are Peacedale Office Building. This is the revenue, and page 23 would be the expenses. Overall, PDOB, or the Peacedale Office Building, is proposed at $110,649, or an increase of 2.49%. On page 24 for the Senior Services Fund, 24 is revenue and 25 is expenses. This is showing a no increase and actually a slight decrease, about $35, for the Senior Services Fund at $707,806. And overall, the actual operating transfer in from the general fund is also going down from $534,000 to $517,000. Moving along on pages 26 and 27 would be the Neighborhood Guild. 26 would be revenue and 27 would be expense. The Guild is proposed at $1,039,786, or a proposed increase of 8.23%. This fund is self-sustaining, no transfer in from the general fund. On pages 28 and 29 is the Community Recreation Center. 28 being revenue and 29 being expense. The Community Recreation Center is proposed budget of $864,513, or an increase of 10.17%. And the operating transfer in from the general fund here, this is the other one that I had noted previously, is proposed for an increase of $28,000 approximately, from $410,000 to $438,000. The debt service fund is being proposed for an increase of 97.05% to a new number, or a proposed number for FY 25-26 of $3.5 million. This is being driven by year one of the bond anticipation notes, or BANs, on the new high school project. You'll see the operating transfer in is going up about $1.1 million to $2.6 million. This is being offset because the BANs are going to cost approximately $1.7 million. This is being offset by the proposed use of fund balance from the debt service fund of $682,000. There is also a proposed state aid figure in the budget of $175,000. Moving along is the outstanding debt of the town, which you'll see decreasing over time. Within the current year to the next year, we're going down about almost $1.2 million, which is continuing to steadily decline. Right now, until we issue the new debt. But it is going down roughly $1 million a year, and as you can see, we do have some debt falling off and reducing. FY15, the bond from 2015, we're going from, this is our last year where we have principal and interest payments, and next year we'll just have a few interest payments on the 2015 bond. So debt is reducing, but we're gonna, as mentioned, we will be taking on some new debt, and these numbers will be changing. Moving along to page 32, this is a summary of the schedule for the bond anticipation notes. I should have by the end of, I was told by left field, by either tomorrow or Monday, we'll have, if need be, I asked them to reevaluate the bond issuance amount. I had gotten about 6 months ago from them the amount needed for the year one construction at $61 million. So they are re-verifying that for me. But right now we are working off of that at $61 million. These numbers are all from an estimate that was provided, I want to say January 31st, but at that time we were running a rate of 3%, which we had been using historically for the year one bands. Not to be confused with the actual issuance of the bond, which we have assumed at 3.5%, but the year one bands we have been assuming at a 3% interest rate, which we are projecting interest of just over $1.8 million. And down below you see the timeline of events for the issuance of the bonds. Very happy to report on number one. I am just about there. I had some help from a few departments today I'm very grateful for. They were able to turn around some of the information I needed to get that POS updated. The POS, is the preliminary official statement. So that will be turning over probably tomorrow, a little early. But key points of note on this is going to be the bond rating call with Moody's, item 7. That'll be on May 5th. And the competitive sale, that's when we'll actually hear we'll learn the rates on June 11th. So on the competitive sale is when we will get the results and learn the results. I'm sorry, I'm actually skipping one. The 7, 8, and 8 is a big one too. That's when we'll learn the results of our review from Moody's and if we're holding our bond rating. So 7 is our actual bond rating call with Moody's, and 8 will get on May 30th, we'll get our rating. And then the competitive sale on number 10 will be June 11th. I did get new dates for 11 and 12. Believe the 11 was going to be moved to June 21st, and actually we were holding the band issue and funding on June 26th. So the funds are expected to be available on June 26th. And again, the other item note that I jumped over, we will be before the council, item number 4, at the April 28th meeting for consideration on authorizing the issuance of these bond anticipation notes. Page 33 is the Water Enterprise Fund. Water Enterprise Fund is proposed for a budget next year of $1.4 million, or $1,427,000. That is a proposed increase of 7.36%. On page 35 and 36 is wastewater, 35 being revenue, 36 being expense. Wastewater is proposed for $5,564,068, or a 4.1% increase. And solid waste on page 37, 37 being for the revenue summary, 38 for the expense. Solid waste fund, enterprise fund is proposed for $1,115,146, or a 7.61% increase. And finally, the school operating budget. This slide on page 39 will take you through the adopted changes enacted by the council through the preliminary adopted budget on March 17th. So within the town manager's proposed budget was an amount of $62,587,510. The enacted changes through council action is the use of fund balance of $77,189, a reduction in state aid of $10,690, and an operating transfer in, as the town manager had noted earlier, of $608,295 from the healthcare management fund, which again, we noted the other night, but worth noting again, we have received confirmation from both RIDE and the Auditor General that this will not impact the town's maintenance of effort for the school department going forward. And then on the expense side, you'll see the changes enacted to balance the budget on the expense side on the bottom portion of the screen. Moving along on page 40 and 41. On page 40 is the revenues portion of the school department budget for next year, school operating fund, which is proposed at, as noted, at $63,262,304, which is a proposed increase of 1.29%. And no increase in local appropriation, again, as noted before, but worth noting, at $55,994,773. And that is all. Our next action on the council, by the council on the budget after this will be April 28th, the consideration of petitions and the budget adoption.
All right, thank you, Brian. Any questions from council members on the budget? Any questions from school committee members? All right, I do want to come back to a question we had for the school department at the end of last meeting relating to potential agreements that can be entered in to cap the amount that would be paid to added districts for the tuition relating to students who decide to go out of district. So, Mr. CFO of the schools, have you looked into that? Can you give us any insight? Or Mr. Superintendent, what do you have for us?
Sure, there's one consortium, so much like towns cooperating with one another for purchase services, there is one consortium that calls themselves the Northwest Schools Consortium, consisting of Burrillville, Cumberland, Lincoln, North Smithfield, and North Providence, who have been in a consortium around everything from professional development to purchase services since 2010. Around 2010, I believe at that time the state was still operating in a regional CTE structure, and so there was collaboration in terms of, because they would be all sending to the same CTE region, the needs of, or making sure that those conversations were being held collectively, because it was a collective endeavor. And so basically they continue to exist in an agreement where each school, now that we no longer are in regions and every school is potentially a free agent to create as they will, they have agreed to caps or cap on the tuition they hold up to, or they advertise that they hold up to 3 spots for each community in that consortium. Interesting to note is that the one big Polk community is not involved in that, and that's Pontigansett. And Burrillville is also included in that. So it's, I have it here in front of me. Burrillville, Cumberland, Lincoln, North Providence, North Smithfield, and Smithfield. So they all created the Northwest Schools Consortium, and so they do things, their technology directors all meet together, their curriculum directors all meet, and they try to find some economies of scale. And then as it relates to CTE, what I could find is that, again, that they, for those 3 spots, that they have a $5,000 tuition cap. Now, if all of a sudden that, I don't know, and I was not able to get in touch with any of my colleagues from these districts that says, okay, well, what if you go over that cap or more applicants? But that is the only one that I'm aware of that is currently in an agreement with one another. Again, everything with CTE radically changed with Commissioner Wagner. And much to Charahoe's chagrin, or the superintendent at the time, Barry Ritchie, who had already re-upped as Charahoe being the southern region, or expectation to do that, got into quite a back and forth. So now, again, it's under an entirely different landscape. However, my understanding is that those Northwest schools continue to collaborate with one another around the CTE programmings that they are interested in, or that they may or may not offer, and they continue to work collectively.
So the authority now that tells us or informs us how to calculate the amount to pay to add a district, is that state statute?
Correct. It's always the local property tax transfer or tax appropriation divided by the resident average daily membership as of June 30 of the previous fiscal year. That's state mandated.
All right, so absent an agreement that provides for otherwise, that parties have contracted into, we have to sort of look to state statute to tell us how much we have to pay for these students electing to go out of district. So, I mean, any agreement with other districts as to capping the amount that we would each pay each other for students going out of district, that would require sort of mutual assent, each party's agreeing, which may be difficult because the amount they're getting now is more than what we would like to pay them if we were to come to an agreement. So sort of unlikely to get to that point. But, I mean, you talk about sort of economies of scale involved with these consortiums. Is there any potential to sort of get to a similar type agreement with the schools that we're sending most of our students to that are going out of district? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think that to your first point, yeah, I think that all budgets are now lean, and in many cases, especially when you're talking $16,000 per student going out, where we have in terms of CTE programs 92 students out, we're not really in the greatest bargaining position to say somebody to say, oh, 16, yes, we'll gladly take 5 instead. Now that might not be the case once the new high school is built, and all of a sudden that becomes a driver, or that becomes something where people want to come in. But
could that be potential leverage to enter or engage other districts to potentially enter an agreement? We have this new high school, which may have attractive programs. In the event you predict that some of your students may come to us, we're going to cap the amount now reciprocally, meaning this is what we'd pay you, this is what you'd pay us.
Yeah, I think that those are conversations that can be had potentially, if we have them early on, into next fiscal year. That would be my one concern. Or if I was coming from that other district going, okay, well, I've built that into my budget now for so many years. They also have declining enrollment. So again, there are conversations that can be had. I don't think any right now is in the position as we're all in the same FY26 piece, and budgets have been crafted and certain assumptions been put in to reduce CTE tuition by 2/3. However, I think in terms of opening those conversations to say, hey, can we have our facilities directors get together? Can we have our assistant superintendents and curriculum directors, run joint professional development? Okay, do we have similar calendars? Can we run groups and cohorts together? So I definitely think that there'll be an appetite for those shared services across most districts, so I think the potential is there. However, the structure is not in existence formally yet. It'd be something that we would need to jumpstart.
Okay. It's sort of definitely an interesting thing. I mean, all things remaining equal, if there was no new high school coming, then another district would have, not in their right mind even come to the table about this. But now that we have this new high school coming, maybe that changes things a little. I like what you're saying, potential leverage there. It is a little early, I guess, but if we can maybe, move toward that, just approach it.
Right. Get back to the, back to the collective piece, in terms of what they're feeling now is that, they've got the potential to lose students as well, and declining, as people had brought up in the last meeting, declining birth rates and declining enrollment is happening in lots of districts. So to look for cost savings and to find those commonalities, especially among things like transportation and among purchasing. I think that there's a appetite across the state to at least begin those conversations, or to see everybody would benefit. And I think it would be beneficial to have us get back to those collective, how can we collectively benefit one another, rather than how do we compete with one another and ultimately try to put each other out of business through CTE programming. Yep. My hope is that I would like the state to come forward with this, because this shouldn't come down to whether Pete Cummings and I get along with one another. So that's where, when we did meet with the state and had some preliminary conversations about this from the equity standpoint, oh, well, I know this superintendent, but I don't know this one. Who's coming to the table, who isn't? That shouldn't, in terms of funding and predictability, as well as equity across the state and a educational funding formula. So while, I would urge the state to take action so that a CTE cost is a CTE cost, regardless of, how well the superintendents or school boards get along with one another. But again, the overall piece outside of the CTE, where we could do some collective purchasing and some agreements, I think there'd be appetite, and we're certainly open for those conversations.
Great, thank you. Good.
Honestly, I just wanted to say that I'm glad to hear that you are open to collaborating with other districts, because, like I mentioned in the other meeting, finding savings where you can is going to be coming from going across districts. And I know you talked about looking across the state. I think the first districts you got to look at, obviously, are Narragansett, Charlestown, and North Kingstown, right? Look at our neighbors first and start talking to them, focus on where we can do that, because we're probably not trying to poach students from Foster Gloucester, right? Taking a drive down from there. So really start early, and I'm glad to hear that, Superintendent. And I just wanted to echo what the Council President said, because I think it is a good idea to try to ask responsibly, hey, we are at a high place here. Can we look at price caps in the future and for the future fiscal year? So I'm glad that you're taking that approach, Superintendent.
The one other piece that I would throw in, just because it related to last meeting, as well as a large dollar amount, as well as that the state needs to get involved. And when we did have this, is that, again, we do have more than CTE. We have the charter schools, so we have 125 students being sent to charter schools, where 92 currently for CTE. So again, in terms of what CTEs were originally set up for, as to why there are two, as well as a state school now also coming in, we have to have those conversations, because obviously as that per pupil expenditure goes up based off of the average daily, once our numerator keeps on going down, that per pupil keeps on coming up, and it becomes attractive for other people, and in this case, one of the state schools, to even come on in and try and take our students away from us, or through that choice.
I wanted to follow up on my discussion about the transportation costs and our potential ability to advocate for ourselves as a town. And we did the resolution on Monday to send to the State House. So I spoke with the primary sponsor in the House, and that's Representative Courtrian today, and she told me about 3 bills that we should look at supporting. one of them is House Bill number 5240, and that reduces the size of vehicles used to transport students, which would be very helpful, I think, being able to send smaller buses. You know, we know a lot of or smaller vehicles, we know a lot of the buses are not full. House Bill 5882, and that relates to licensing qualified bus drivers from Connecticut and Massachusetts who could, in theory, be hired to drive these smaller vehicles, either for the long term or in order to give us time to get more licensed drivers in Rhode Island. And this is a big one, House Bill 6236. And that one relates to reducing the size of our district and actually increasing the number of districts in the state from 5 to 7. That would take away West Greenwich and Jamestown from our sort of area. So right now, I have not been able to track down the Senate companion bills yet, but I just have signed up for Bill Tracker, and I'm going to be really monitoring these and trying to get people to send in letters and also to try to get us there to testify, at least some of us. It's always going to be at the last minute and inconvenient, but if we could do it, that would really help. So, yes.
Can you clarify with the bill that refers to the size of the vehicle? Are we talking vehicles that are not buses? Because our large buses and our minibuses cost, they're like, the
Basically,
difference is not as different.
They want to have vans.
Gotcha, okay, makes
Yeah.
sense. Yep.
So I want to just go back to the out-of-district student topic, and I certainly don't want to tell you how you do your job. I wouldn't want to tell you how to do your job either. But is there any efforts, I feel like I'm sitting here going, we have to work on the 8th grade, not losing the 8th graders. So like, I'm sitting here in my head going, what things could we offer to entice 8th graders? Like, could we give them free theater tickets? Could we give them an athletic pass to get them into all the sporting events, to get them all excited about coming to the high school? Like, what could we do to not, I don't want to.
Yep, so we've put.
I don't know.
So that there have been some changes in terms of, so in years past, that recruitment was done in the second semester. It started as early as the first quarter this year.
Right.
So the school tours, also the peer tutoring that's been going on in terms of high school students going down to the middle school, making those connections. We did those earlier and earlier this year, and we did have increased signups. We're still waiting on the application status for students to get on into a CTE program. So we also, I believe, broke up the tours this year and had 2 different cohorts come on in on different days. So there's been, I think once the shovels go into the ground and we can go from pictures to reality to this is where it's going to be, hey, next year you will be in that building, it will become more and more tangible. But those efforts mainly, continue to go on, but they did start much, much earlier this year than in years past.
I'm just thinking of any way to get our students looking ahead, like the 8th grade students. Like, I'm sure Fritz needs like a dress rehearsal. Could we have Curtis Corner students come over for an enrichment to see the production? Could we have students have access to, like, whatever, get a sports pass going? Anything to get them excited about where they're going to be, because that's the hardest part, and they can see, they can envision themselves at the high school. It's not for me to tell you, but I'm sitting here going, it's more important for every student we don't give away at $16,000. The economy of scale backwards, it doesn't cost us that to educate them at the high school. So
Absolutely.
It's a lot of money that we can then repurpose into the high school environment,
Can I speak to that for one sec? Only just because I have personal knowledge on it. prior to COVID and prior to Dr. McGarry, Rob Mezzanotte him and Barbara Crudale worked very closely with, I think at the time it was Patty All. They had really great activities going on. We had like high school fun day, and we brought the 8th grade class up, and they had field days, and they did all sorts of things. COVID hit, things changed. But over the past couple of years, Chip and Barbara have continued to do similar things, especially when John Rapport was at the high school. He also, so everything that you're saying, I love the ideas because they happen. They may not be exactly what you just spelled out, but those opportunities are there. And I know the administration team at both buildings, I can't really speak to Broad Rock now with Patty, but at the time it was Curtis Corner. But they work very hard, and they bring the 8th graders, they send the kids down to the middle school to kind of get them excited, and then they have opportunities to bring the kids up, and not just for tours, but for actual like activities and kind of having fun events so that they do get that excitement built up. So it's happening, and I'm sure we could get Dr. McGarry to put together like more specifics, but they definitely brainstorm on a regular basis and coordinate very nicely together.
So maybe next year in December when we meet at the budget, when you talk about your budget, you could make sure you address that, because I think that's the piece that, like, for every child that goes to Narragansett or North Kingstown, that exiting dollar we lose. If we can invest money to retain them, I don't care, a couple $1,000s to transport them to see the play or to see the concert or whatever is probably a good investment, because we don't lose the 16.
I might suggest it goes even deeper, right, to the 6th graders, because
Yeah.
that's where we lose
Yeah.
more. We don't lose them, we lose them when they go to 8th to 9th, but we also lose them when they go to the middle school. And so I think we need to your point, think bigger down the line.
Yep.
And then with the new high school coming, that's clearly a game changer as far as it.
I know this is a budget thing, but I was just in my head for a minute. Sorry, thank you.
Interesting thoughts there. I have a follow-up. Has there been any history of sort of like quantifying a metric of, this is how much we're going to spend on a certain amount trying to entice middle schoolers to want to go to the high school, as a fraction of what is the amount we're paying for kids that actually decide to go out of district? It seems like a novel thing, but is that like...
I thought about that.
The administration has done that in the past. I can't speak to what our new guys have done, but in the past, and they work very closely we have PTOs, and then at the high school there's the PTG, and they work very closely with that and trying to coordinate amongst the PTOs and at the middle schools and making those opportunities. But at one point, there was a particular financial data crunch that was kind of put together as far as how much could they have, and quite frankly, it's how much can they afford to put towards marketing and opportunities and open houses and things of that nature. So they definitely have those discussions, but having to Deb's point, having like a formal presentation as far as to what level it's happening might be helpful.
I mean, I feel like at every event you could give away like 2 tickets to the theater, 2 tickets to a football game, right? Those cost nothing in some ways. I mean, just always a giveaway, always something, always getting them connected to the concerts. And not that the concerts cost money, but whatever. And then maybe doing all Broad Rock attendance at some of the other, like a pre-event. I don't know. I feel like,
so can I just,
from the admissions point of view, people spend a lot of money to recruit the student because it's easier to retain than to bring in. It's harder work to bring in a transfer at the university level. So
but I just want to say that we've done, I think, more now than we have in the past. And just a shout out to Jenny Collins with the She-Bop. They did a junior She-Bop, and I think it was across many grade levels. I think 6 to 12. So I think Kate's right. You bring it down to that level. We just have to find more opportunities, but it's happening. And that's the thing is that these collaborations, you see it in music, you see it in theater, you see it in sports. Can we do more? Absolutely. But it is happening because, I think our number one thing is let's keep the ones we have.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Because it's going to be harder to draw until we get a new high school.
All right. Some good discussion. Any other thoughts? All right, this is a public hearing, so anyone in the audience who wishes to speak, I invite you to come on up. We just ask you to introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. If you have questions, we're going to allow you to ask them, try to get some clarity. With that said, first come, first serve. Come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. I was hoping this evening, being part of the team, even though you've benched our group during the season, I'd appreciate a few extra, a minute here, a minute two, because you can't put some thoughts together and then have some specific, mix it up, and the time is taken up.
Yeah, Jim, we'll try to toll your time when you're getting a response to a question, so go ahead.
All right, and maybe go from there. Boy.
Jim, I'm going to yield you 2 extra minutes from me because I'm succinct.
Boy, you really subdued this guy. I don't know what to...
I really liked your
All right, here we go.
Facebook succinct comment.
Obviously, the Council of School Committee have come to agreement here on the monies that they need and are going to approve for the fiscal year 26. Sometimes we forget here, and I've brought this up but not enough times. In 3 years' time, the schools are going to control about 95% of our debt here in town, and about 73%, 72% then in 3 years of our property tax. It's really incredible. And I think about business investing, and as well as local taxpayers are investing in our school department in our town. But there are 2 frightening words that came up a month or so ago by the superintendent, and he was correct. But the 2 words that frighten an investment is the words top heavy. And he mentioned that in regards to personnel. And he was really proud of the loyalty for all of that, which is most understandable. I look at it from the standpoint of politics and benefits, but the word top heavy. And then I said, geez, top heavy. Here we are with this wonderful town. The manager's office, he's got 30,000 residents to take care of. What, about 80 square miles, 2/3 land and the 1/3 water in South Kingstown. Plus he has to work with neighboring towns and collaborate on a number of issues, specifically in the public safety world. And he does this with, if I could use the comparison, with about 8-10 administrators, plus his lieutenant and himself in the manager's office. And I take a look at the school department, and I bring this up constantly with 26, 27 administrators. I don't believe that includes the CFO or the superintendent. And I brought up 22 years ago when we had 4,400 kids and 25 administrators. Now we have half the kids, and we have 27 administrators. And I take a look here that the schools are getting 73% again. And it's working down as it should, because the town and what the town's future demands, it's going to demand more every year. And I think you've seen that in this year's budget that the manager put together. And what I'm looking at here, I know I've warned you many times with the bans and the big bond issue coming up in fiscal year 29. There's not going to be 16.8 people like we have for fiscal year 26. Which the school superintendent and the school department has had to reduce in personnel, 16.8 FTEs, I believe the number was. And we're going to have to find a way, we've got to pare down substantially the number of administrators. They are the top-heavy group, that's been admitted to, and there's no other way to catch up with the band costs and the bond costs in fiscal year 27 and 8. It's going to be absolutely impossible. So I don't like putting off decisions like that, but they're going to have to start at the end of this year and certainly pare back on the number of administrators. I don't want to see too many cities and towns up at the State House ask for a 4%, if you will, relaxation for this year. Providence is going in for 8%. I know of 2 other cities looking at 5 and 6% for exemption for this year, and that could really steamroll, and that would be really very, very difficult for this community. So just a couple more things, then I'll get out of your hair here. Back when I was president of the council, and my first year when Broad Rock opened, and you never see this talked about in the paper. No one ever goes back with history with numbers. We seem to go back to 2014, 2012. But I was involved with a petition to reduce the property tax to the schools by $1,231,000. And it actually won quite handily with about 260 plurality out of 4,000 votes. And that was immediately followed by closing of the South Road School. And folks woke up after that huge increase when they opened Broad Rock, what they call the white elephant in certain circles. And it was just an appalling amount of hiring that was done by the school department at that time. In the 5 years after that, from 2000 to 2005, we went from 519 FTEs to 620.3. I've got the numbers. I have every single year of the school committee's proposals. And yet, school population was dropping like a rock from 4383. In that 5 years, we were already below 4,000 kids, and NESDEC said, no one's having babies, we've got a problem coming up. And man, they were right on the money. And yet the folks were very angry at that Broad Rock opening and how much money was spent. Imagine that, petition in '04 and then closing South Road. And I hate to see that happening again. Yes, we don't have any more schools to close, but we're down to 5 of them, and that's probably going to where it's going to stay. But we don't need that to repeat itself, and we've got to do something here, because the town's going to need more funding, and the taxpayers are going to need help. And just one other thing here, I really need to ask, because no one's brought it up in the last bunch of meetings. I've been to all of them. What is the status of our Homestead Exemption Act?
Passed the House, passed the Senate. Has it been signed by the governor yet? I don't think it has.
But is at least on his desk?
Yes.
All right, well, I hope for good luck, because the Public Expenditure Council, I don't know if you've read the articles lately, they've been talking about trying to knock that out here, and with the difficulty with the state budget office. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jim.
Rory, we have different rules at the school committee, so I don't know if this is okay to ask during your public comment period, but I just want, because I'm very confused by one of the stats that Mr. O'Neill specified. I know when he said top heavy, what I know he was referring to is our top step teachers, and that we have a lot of top step teachers, but then he went on to say that we had 27 administrators, and I'm very confused by that, because to my knowledge, we don't have 27 administrators. And so I just want to make sure that we have the right numbers.
It might just be a classification difference. So essentially on our budget, I'm referring to our budget presentation from March. So we have district-wide admin budgeted for next year at 7.0. And then we have school-based admin at 9.0, so that's 16. And then we have what's called district-wide support. Most of those positions are located at the admin building. That's 9.6, so that's 25.6 if you're considering all of them as administrators.
And admin support would be what?
Yeah, so admin support would be our HR coordinator, our ELA coordinator of instruction, our math coordinator, our digital literacy specialist, and our accounting manager.
Hey, Jim, you gotta push the button.
These are high-priced folks that we can't match here in the town. I don't know what our various department folks are earning, but this is why your own superintendent brought up we are top-heavy with personnel costs. Just take a look at the numbers here. You can take a look at just the salary increase, but you see no increase in the health benefits as an example. in this recent year. That's just telling you that the high price of the salaries that you pay. But I'll get the homework, and we're going to go at it again, because the 26.8 shows up all the time with 4 different categories when you add them up. And now you're telling me it's 25.6, maybe you let a couple of people go. But this is the high-priced talent. And the ESSER people you brought over is more of the high-priced talent. And with the bottom-up rules that the superintendent told us about, you can't get rid of the high-step, if you will, teachers. You've got to come in and take out the lower, really energetic folks. But with administrators, you should be able to let them go. I'll get the paperwork. I don't appreciate that, but I'll get the homework.
Just to clarify.
All right. We can just leave it at that. You guys can pick it up at a later date. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? I invite you to just come on up.
I'd like to start before my 5 minutes starts with a question. I have a question. It has to do with commercial versus residential tax rates. So, in a report that RIPAC put out in the last month, they showed the different tax rate levels for all the 39 towns and cities and towns in the state. And in 23 of the cities and towns, the commercial tax rates were higher than the residential. So South Kingstown's not in that category. South Kingstown's one of the 16 towns where they're the same. So my question is, why are they the same here? What's the rationale for having them the same?
It's my understanding that's a policy decision. Well, it is a policy decision, and this town has taken the approach that they do not have a split rate. The real estate and the commercial are the same rate here. We do not have a split. A number of communities that you mentioned do have a split rate, and you are able to go up to 50% higher than on the real estate, from the real estate on commercial. Some communities do that. South Kingston has taken the approach that we do not have a split rate.
So how does that negatively affect residential people that are paying the residential rates?
If you pull up slide 10, this will give you some figures that help clarify your question. It shows that commercial properties are getting the benefit of the tax rate remaining the same because the decline in the tax rate is in excess of the amount by which the assessment has increased. An 18% decline in the rate versus a 9% increase in the assessment. So you can see there the town is receiving less money in the tax levy year over year because of the tax rate decline.
The town's getting less money? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. You can see it there. See that negative 725 there?
Yeah, but that doesn't really answer my question. My question is, would it be more beneficial to the residential taxpayers to have a higher commercial rate?
The answer is likely it may be, but that's a policy decision we'd have to discuss, and we haven't gotten to that discussion yet.
Okay. I'll be looking forward to hearing about it in the future. All right, so I'm going to start off tonight, first of all, by saying that about 90% of what I'm going to be talking about tonight in regards to the schools happened before the arrival of Mr. Pedraza and Mr. Kilpatrick. So in the news recently, there's been some interesting things. Go Local Providence has released the latest thing from UR economist Leonard Lodardo, And the title is UR Economist Warns Rhode Island is in a Growth Recession. So the metrics that he follows shows that Rhode Island isn't in a recession, a growth recession, wherein the amount of growth has declined. So that's not a harbinger of good things to come. Also, I believe I sent this to the school committee and the town council. It was a 20 ways to make Rhode Island better. It was also on Go Local. It's an editorial. And one of the ones that I highlighted is consolidate school districts. No layoffs are necessary, and it can be accomplished by restructuring over time. If staffing reductions make sense, do them through attrition. Why do I bring that up? Because when I heard that tonight to talk about collaboration between South Kingstown School District and other school districts, that's not what we need. We need regionalization. It's the only thing that's going to save this district. It's the only thing that's going to save Narragansett. They're in denial. They're in total denial down there. This year, not taking into account out-of-district tuition for CTE and charter schools, South Kingstown is paying $28,475 per student. Narragansett this year, $37,480 per student, $9,000 more per student. That's a per pupil expense in Narragansett this year. Now, their enrollment projection in the next 10 years for the high school is 200 students. As I said before, when it drops below 400, high schools start to lose their functionality. If you look at their, don't look at their preschool stuff. Those numbers are a little wacky. You look at their kindergarten numbers. The kindergarten numbers now are in the 30s and 40s. They're soon going to have about 50 students per class per year of the 13, eventually of the 13 grade levels. That's what's coming down the pike. Now, they cannot not regionalize. And we're building this high school that when we look at our projection over 10 years, doesn't have enough students to keep the school filled. So I say it again. We need to start this conversation. We need to find like-minded people in the two districts, form a committee, get the teachers' unions involved, get everybody involved, the town councils and the school committees, and start talking about it. South Kingstown is the only, so you were talking about CT tuitions or charter tuitions. Those tuitions are set each year by RIDE, and they're locked in. They're not negotiable. And they're directly related to the district's per pupil expense, which is why, as I just mentioned, Narragansett and South Kingstown this year for CT tuition or charter tuition are number 1, 2 in the state. Narragansett's paying $22,780 per student, and we're paying $19,295. And since our enrollment's going to drop next year, but the amount of money to run the district is the same, our cost is going to go up per pupil expense, and so is our CTE tuition. They're locked in. Now, between our two towns, I've mentioned this before, this year.
All right, though, we have given you a lot. Just want to ask you to sort of be concise. We told the time from the beginning, so we'll give you. I know we gave him rope too.
You gave him about another 5 minutes.
We gave you a few more minutes from the beginning. I'm just asking you, please be concise. Go ahead.
I know you don't want to hear what I have to say. Okay. Between our two towns this year, we're spending $105 million for our school districts. 3,200 students. Barrington's 3,300 students for $65 million. Do you need another statistic? Okay, now, before, so the district just did an equity audit, and the equity audit showed that we have certain groups, subgroups of students in our district that are underperforming. Economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, free lunch students, our Native American and Black students, our English language learners, multiracial students, and Hispanic students. All those groups are underperforming our white students. Now, that's not news. But when the town received its American Rescue Plan funds and its ESSER funds, we didn't use them properly. First of all, the first number that we were given was 5.1 million, but at the end, when all the funds were expended, it was down to 4.8 million because $300,000 was lost. They took it back because we didn't use it in the time allotted for that first tranche of money. Now, on top of that, our school district took forever for our school district to use those funds. And a matter of fact, in the end, they used a significant amount of that money to fix buildings when they should have been used to fix students.
All right, Doral, you're well over now. Can you just wrap it up? We've given you the equal amount of time that Jim O'Neill got.
You want to get home before 9 tonight?
No, I'm just trying. I mean, this is how we run things. We
So-
typically, don't just go on as long as anyone wishes. You've got to keep some order here. We do have another member of the audience who may wish to speak.
I already asked her. She said she didn't.
Well, Brett Harrington is back there. He typically speaks.
He just said he didn't either.
Do you wish to speak? All right, Doral, wrap it up. You got another minute. Go.
I love this. Don't you love it? All right, so in the 2024 Housing Works Factbook, it says South Kingstown's median housing cost is $560,000 for a single-family home, and it requires $180,000 in income to afford it. So here's the South Kingstown's building permits. I got it from the building inspector's office. In the 1990s, we were averaging 180 building permits a year. And in 2010s, the latest decade we have information for, 69. That's a 62% drop in building permits. So we're expecting all these students to come and fill our high school, but you have no plan as to where they're coming from. And lastly, this is probably the last, as soon as the high school opens, this will be no longer available to the town and the town council. You have another opportunity this year, not to just level fund the schools. You can reduce the funding to the schools by the number of students that were lost between the last 2 years because of enrollment by law. And the number for this year is $1,950,000, but I'm not keeping my hopes up.
All right, thank you, Doral.
Doral, before you go, Doral, come back for me. Yeah, I do. So I want to say, I hope this is okay, and I'm going to do something that I'm not sure it's okay to do, but I'm going to read you an email that we all received, and so I won't say who it's from, but you can get the sense of what it is. I just wanted to reach out and make it clear that the current town council of Narragansett is not interested in regionalizing the school system. This is something the newspapers are talking about. There is no interest in this. I hope that the South Kingstown Town Council is not pushing this agenda. Please call me with any questions. So that email was sent. So we have heard, that is succinct, that is plain clear. They're saying, please don't talk about this. We're not interested. We could talk about it forever on behalf of residents who want it, that live in South Kingstown, but if Narragansett won't come and talk about it, it's not happening. So what would you do if you ran for the council, if you got that email, what would you do?
And Doral, if you do want to
wait,
go to
wait.
Narragansett and
I think,
and
Doral, I think you already
address
answered
it.
that question. You asked that we have like-minded people begin to form a committee, including potential town council, school committee members, and school teacher union members. You mentioned that. So I think you've already answered the question.
I've answered the question, but just to let you know,
So
the thing that surprises me the most is that the Rhode Island Department of Education isn't telling our two towns to talk to each other with how much money we're spending.
All right, all right.
So it was me.
No, you can go. I mean, I just don't know, are we adding this or?
We don't need to add it. It's not a, it's.
We don't need to add it.
So I just feel like when you read something that clear, no matter how interesting or potentially efficient it could become, if the other side is not interested in having a conversation, we're sort of stuck. I would want to learn. Who would not want the information to understand what the process is and what the benefits and the risks are? I don't think anyone's saying that they wouldn't want to understand it. It's just that they're not coming, and so maybe they're looking to go somewhere else. Maybe they like their little school. What I hear from people who actually either teach there or work there or live in the community is, we like the size of our little school, so that means to me they're happy to pay whatever it is to maintain that little school.
Well, Doral, that doesn't prompt a response there. Kind of just leaving it at ending comments here. We've ended in good discussion on that.
So that is that for me. And I don't really like the exchange about the administrators, but I feel like that's another conversation. What? Okay. Because the way I understood it is there's 7 principal type people out in the field. There's 9 of people, you said, in the core of the admin, the opposite, flip it. 9 principals in the field of some variety, correct? And then you have 7 people like you, Ryan, and Mr. Assistant Superintendent, I can't read your name. Dan Seeger, sorry. Can't see that far. So there's 7 of you, and then there's other additional people, like the
Correct.
HR coordinator, ELA, digital. Okay. So there's not 18 administrators in the high school, right? So
Correct.
okay. So there's a discrepancy with what Mr. O'Neill says of about 1-ish.
Whoa, nope. You guys are going to take that conversation offline. If you
just
want to
so you
report it back
know,
to us, you can. Go ahead.
It's because we're down an administrator for
Which is Brian.
We are not, so, I mean, I don't know why, sometimes positions get wonky in talking about them, but we are losing somebody at the administrative level year over year. So from the year right now to our next budget cycle. So that, it's not a discrepancy. We are losing real people and real positions.
As part of the adopted FY26 as proposed, there are eliminations of administrators are being eliminated in our FY26.
Okay.
That we've put a gavel down on. So they've come from all bargaining units as well as administrators.
Okay. So could it be possible that both are right? He might be thinking 27 and you might be thinking 26, and that might be accurate?
Happy looking.
If he's looking at last year's numbers, because we've been going down every year in administrators as well. And it's across the board that we're losing people, and it does include administrators. And it's just, every category is losing people.
All right. Good.
So one of the things that I'd like to say is that we discuss all these things, and we know where Narragansett stands. We know that we could save some money by doing this. I do think that even though the situation is like this now, as things potentially change with CTE, or we have a better way to track students if they leave for some reason and are not still participating in the CTE that they're over there for, maybe we can get them back. There are some real problems right now, and so if you're on the position that you're the one that's receiving the revenue from the towns that want to send their where people want to go to that real small Narragansett environment, and we're essentially subsidizing that. I think as the equations change, as things sort of fall more into place, we may have a lot more room to discuss these things. And so I think, forming, I guess Dora left. Oh, I can't see him. Okay. So I think that, I see his foot now. I think that we should, forming a committee of interested parties would be a potential way to prepare for when they may change their mind.
Go ahead.
I think my colleague said it really well, and I would say and encourage Doral to bring this testimony that you're bringing tonight, that you're bringing to us, to the Narragansett Town Council meeting. I mean, that's a great place to start. So, if President Menzies will be welcoming you there. So, overall, this is the third budget hearing, right?
Second public hearing during the public hearing process, but we also had a public hearing during the preliminary processes, yes.
Gotcha. Well, I just wanted to say that I think this budget is a good budget. I think the town and the school district did a good job of coming together for our school board and our town council here. And I think that it is a fiscally responsible budget. And again, want to encourage us all to work collaboratively going forward and try to find savings. So.
All right. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I actually think that we live in very uncertain times, and I feel like Stuart said it last night or 2 nights ago, things are ever changing, and at the local level we need to pay attention, and this is where we can affect real change. I feel like this is a very responsible budget in a lot of ways, but I do think it's possible that we could recoup some savings. We're going to continue to look for areas. I mean, a penny or 2 pennies or whatever we can get. I see you nodding, Rory, because I think you care at the end of the day about what we pass on to the taxpayer, and I'm happy to argue and lobby for any changes that we need to make it even more accommodating. I think the huge increase in the assessments, we're going to always be seeing that because we live in a desirable location, and I think that we just need to be very mindful of what we pass on, because we are taking other people's money, and then that's our responsibility, is to use it wisely. So I hope that on the 28th we can look and see if there's any more places where we can make some adjustments. I heard Rory talking a little bit about the collection rate and all those things, and we can figure all that out, but I know that we've asked the school department multiple times to level fund. This was we basically gave you back money that was already yours, and that's great, and it's a kind of a win-win, because on our side the maintenance of effort remains the same again, and people care about that. But we just need to succinctly wrap this up and say that we're going to look on the 28th for any additional money that we can make for the taxpayers' pocketbooks to stay.
Definitely.
All right. Well, it's been a good meeting. It's been a good budget process up to this point. We got final budget adoption on Monday, the 28th. We'll see where that goes. That'll also be a public hearing. I look forward to We'll continue to work through the budget, and we'll see what we finally adopt on that date. Thank you all for the good collaboration. It's been a good season, and we'll see you next time. We do have a meeting on Thursday, the 24th, with Union Studios about affordable housing, so just throwing that out there to anyone who's interested. But until then, see ya next time.